the golden boy who couldn't hold on revised and expanded script. Introduction: the fragility of the Gilded Age. Hollywood has always loved discovering a face that feels instantly familiar, a presence so effortless that audiences believe it must be destiny. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Ryan O'Neal became exactly that kind of star. He didn't climb the mountain, he was airlifted to the summit. He wasn't the dangerous, brooding presence of Brando, nor the cerebral, distant intellectualism of Nicholson. He felt reachable, romantic, and human. He was the Golden Boy, a title that sounds like a reward but often functions as a cage. For a brief moment, Hollywood crowned him as the perfect leading man for a new era of vulnerability. But what happens when fame arrives faster than emotional stability? When the industry elevates someone before they've even finished the rough draft of who they are? As you listen to this story, ask yourself, can a person survive being adored by millions while quietly failing in private? Chapter 1. The unlikely heartthrob and the PYTON place effect. Ryan O'Neal did not emerge with the traditional armor of a leading man. His early career was forged in the fires of Peyton Place, the first primetime soap opera. For 5 nights a week, he lived in the living rooms of America as Rodney Harrington. This is where the O'Neal archetype was born. He possessed a gentle masculinity. Unlike the stars of the 1950s who projected stoicism, Ryan projected a need to be cared for. This difference made him irresistible to a generation tired of rigid, silent fathers. They saw in Ryan a man who might actually tell them how he felt. Everything changed in 1970 with Love Story. It wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural earthquake. It transformed O'Neal into a global phenomenon almost overnight. The film's tagline, "Love means never having to say you're sorry," became a mantra, but for Ryan, it was a tragedy. It set a standard for romantic sincerity that no real human being could ever maintain. Fans didn't just admire him, they felt they owned his heart. Ask yourself, what happens when an industry profits from a person's emotional openness, but offers no protection for the person underneath? Chapter 2. The Kubrick Ordeal and the Weight of Perfection. To understand the slow erasure of Ryan O'Neal, we have to look at 1975's Barry Lyndon. Stanley Kubrick, the most demanding director in history, chose Ryan to be his lead. Kubrick didn't want a performer. He wanted a beautiful, blank canvas that he could paint with the colors of 18th-century tragedy. The production lasted over 300 days. Kubrick pushed O'Neal to the brink of psychological exhaustion, demanding hundreds of takes for a single look. This period was a turning point. If Love Story made him a star, Barry Lyndon made him an artifact. He was treated like a prop, a beautiful object to be moved around a set. This reinforced Ryan's deepest insecurity, the feeling that he was only valuable for how he looked, not for who he was. When the film received a lukewarm reception at the time, Ryan felt the sting of artistic failure on top of his personal confusion. He began to realize that in the eyes of the elite, he was just a pretty face who had wandered into a masterpiece. Chapter 3. Fame as an amplifier for insecurity. Behind the scenes, Ryan O'Neal was a man shaped by a demanding father, novelist and screenwriter Charles O'Neal, and a mother who struggled with her own demons. He grew up in a household where approval was a moving target. Fame did not cure this, it acted as a megaphone for his inner critic. As expectations grew, so did his dependence on external validation. He didn't just want to be loved, he required it to feel tethered to the earth. Love became both his anchor and his escape, a way to feel grounded in a world that suddenly felt overwhelming. His early marriage to Joanna Moore was a harbinger of the chaos to come. It was a relationship defined by high stakes and low stability, ending in a bitter custody battle that would haunt the rest of his life. Ask yourself honestly, when someone uses love to heal wounds they don't fully understand, can love ever be enough to save them? Chapter 4. The FARRAH-FAWCETT years, the sun and the storm. In 1979, Ryan met Farrah Fawcett. It was a collision of two of the brightest stars in the galaxy. On the surface, they were the ultimate Hollywood royalty, the blonde icons of a sun-drenched California dream. But beneath the flashbulbs, their bond was a folie à deux, a shared madness. Their relationship was defined by an intensity that the human heart isn't designed to sustain for long. It was a cycle of explosive arguments followed by passionate reconciliations. They were mirrors of each other, both beautiful, both deeply insecure, and both pursued by a public that refused to let them grow old or be imperfect. For Ryan, Farrah was the ultimate prize and the ultimate mirror. When she was with him, he felt like the golden boy again. When they fought, he felt like the failure his father always hinted he was. Their relationship lasted 30 years in various forms of on-again, off-again volatility. It wasn't a partnership. It was a decades-long struggle for emotional oxygen. Chapter 5, The Fractured Dynasty, A Legacy of Pain. Perhaps the most harrowing part of the Ryan O'Neal story isn't the lost roles or the fading looks. It's the children. Tatum, Griffin, Patrick, and Redmond. When Ryan and Tatum starred together in Paper Moon, she became the youngest person ever to win an Academy Award. Ryan's reaction was famously complicated, a mix of pride and a stinging jealousy that his daughter had achieved the prestige that eluded him. The O'Neal household became a place where the lines between parent and child were blurred by substance abuse and emotional neglect. Griffin O'Neal once described his father's temper as a hurricane. The public feuds, the arrests, and the heartbreaking estrangements were played out in the tabloids, turning a private tragedy into a public spectacle. Ryan was a man who wanted to be a hero, but didn't know how to be a father. He treated his children like peers or rivals because he had never been allowed to be a child himself. Chapter 6, Quiet Derailment and the Changing Tide. By the 1980s, the sensitive male was out. Hollywood wanted the action hero. The era of Stallone and Schwarzenegger arrived, and suddenly, Ryan's brand of soft, blue-eyed vulnerability looked dated. He tried to pivot, but the industry is a cruel judge of aging. Unlike Clint Eastwood, who transitioned into the rugged patriarch, or Paul Newman, who became the elder statesman, Ryan seemed stuck in his own youth. He was a man out of time. His reputation for being difficult, a code word for emotionally volatile, began to precede him. Projects dried up. The phone stopped ringing with leading roles and started ringing with guest spots. This wasn't a crash-and-burn exit, it was a slow, agonizing evaporation. Think about this. How many careers don't end in a final act of failure, but simply dissolve into a long, quiet silence? Chapter 7, The Final ACT, Loss and Reflection. The final years of Ryan's life were defined by the slow goodbye to Farrah Fawcett. As she battled cancer, Ryan stayed by her side, a final attempt at the romantic sincerity he had portrayed in Love Story 40 years earlier. In those final months, the world saw a glimpse of the man he might have been: devoted, present, and humbled. But after her death in 2009, Ryan was left in a house filled with ghosts. He spoke openly in his later years about his regrets. He admitted he wasn't a good father. He admitted he had failed the people he loved most. It was a rare moment of honesty from a man who spent his life hiding behind a screen persona. He lived until 2023, seeing his legacy filtered through the lens of celebrity gossip and the achievements of his children. He died a man who had seen the highest heights of the mountain, but spent the last half of his life wandering the base, looking for a way back up. Conclusion: the cost of the crown. Ryan O'Neal's life is a cautionary tale about the gilded age of stardom. It reminds us that being loved by millions is not a substitute for being able to love one person well. Fame doesn't provide you with emotional tools, it only takes away the time you need to build them. He was a symbol of an era that valued beauty and vulnerability, but he was also a victim of an industry that treats people like disposable batteries, using their energy until they are drained and then looking for a newer, shinier model. So the final question isn't just about Ryan O'Neal. It's about us. Why do we build people up so high before they are ready to stand? And why are we so surprised when they eventually fall?